Well, it's that time of the year again. Hey everyone, this is Mikoy, and this time I'm going to be covering Tours Plaza Classic III. We round one just dropped today, and looking at all the matchups, I think there is going to be some pretty interesting matchups. We've definitely got a lot of veterans, but we also have more than enough a lot of newcomers. So I'm definitely excited to see how this tournament is going to go. Oh, and this is also the first tournament that I'm gonna be playing in myself. As you can see, there's my name. So better prepare because your boy is going to be competing in this tournament. Now, instead of doing predictions for every single matchup, because we have 128 players, and in turn we have 64 matches. So to prevent this video from going for 4 years, I'm gonna be highlighting some of my personal favorite matchups and highlighting also the players who I'm most interested in, the players who I see have the biggest potential of making far into this tournament, let alone winning it. So, let's check it out, shall we? So the first up we have here is Temp, the YouTuber extraordinaire who has 300,000 subscribers at the time of this recording. Temp can definitely perform it. Also, just noting the fact that the first tier of Tours Plaza Classic III is OU with Mega Evolutions. Pretty interesting choice to start off the first round. And so, also, the rules states that every matchup will be played in best of three. It's a single elimination format tournament, so once you're out, you're out. And of course, the finals will be a best of five. So, interesting. It's gonna be interesting to see how these players adapt into, having to build having to build the minimum of one team or let alone three. Um, and the finals will be a best of five. So it's gonna be pretty interesting to see how these players will build and how easily adaptable all these players are accustomed to when it comes to the Plaza tiers. And also, replays are mandatory. Please post your replays, because I'll be taking a look at each and every matchup played, and if there are no replays posted or both have not scheduled for activity, you're going to be coin flipped. So make sure you contact your opponent as soon as possible, okay? Okay. So, now we get to actually talking about the players. First up, we have Temp, the 300,000 subscribed YouTuber. Temp is definitely one of those players that is definitely hit or miss. Like, in TP3, he really wasn't the best. He was what, 0-5 in TPP. Definitely like the worst performing manager, but also you can tell that he's washed in terms of the Plaza tier because he's playing Kamamano of all things. But when he's motivated, he can definitely go. Like, take a look at the run we have with the Snoms, where Temp went easily. He had one of the best records in OU. So with OU being the first tier, I think Temp will do easily fine. And it's going to be a real challenge as the tiers get harder and harder from here on out. But I have faith in the guy. So Temp is going to do exactly. He's going to do well. He's going to do well. Next up, we have Toxinex. Next, we have Toxinex. Toxinex is a former Tours Plaza veteran. Well, he's competed in one Tours Plaza event, that being TPP2, and he's done well in Monotype that year. So it'd be interesting to see how Toxinex is now because he's been gone for so long. But this could prove to be a good showcase for him, as he's definitely an underrated player, kind of the likes of Kepper, but definitely a player to look out for when if the tours get harder and harder. It's pretty clear that Toxinex will adapt. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he does in this tournament, especially. Next up is Based What. He was from TPP3. He was part of, I think it was the Deerlings. Let me go check that. Yeah, he was part of Deerling and the Franks. Had a 1-2 record in Ubers, which is not great, but since this is a single elimination tour as opposed to a team tour, I think Basewad has a little bit of a leverage. He can take the pressure off of him. He's not playing for a team. He's just playing for his pride. So, Basewad, I could see him do well. I mean, um, he's definitely got one of the players who has potential, especially in his main tier of Ubers. But in terms of the general plaza scene, you could get easily lost in the shuffle. And based what based what is a when motivated, he's pretty good, but we'll see. We'll see when the tour proceeds. Next up is actually a highlight match. It's between two people who I actually know. Tranquility versus Stitchu. So Axe, very tournaments organized based, as opposed to Stitchu, who's very tours player based. Comparing these two is like apples and oranges. You never really know how good these two are, comparatively speaking. But when Axe does play, back then Axe was a beast. Like TPP1, Axe had a pretty good record in UU in that UU tier, and meanwhile Stitchu, very very middle of the road in terms of Smogon. He's very middle of the road, but in terms of the Plaza scene, he's kind of hardly regarded in an odd sense. So it'll be interesting to see. So I'm gonna actually predict this match as opposed to highlighting these players and how they're good at. You know how good these two are, Tranquility and Stitchu. If you've been around in the Plaza scene for like a year, these two are definitely in the chat a lot. So it'd be interesting to see how these two match up against each other. I think I'm gonna predict Axe to win over Stitchu, but Stitchu could easily win. And so, it's very half and half. We'll see. We'll see when the matches get played, and it's especially in OU, considering both these two never really main OU. So, yeah, that's my official prediction. So I don't know these two, the next pairing, but I do know the next one, which is Woobin. Now, Woobin was part of the winning team from BLT this past year with the Turffield Turtwigs. Um, in terms of the tours room regular scene, like not just Plaza, like even the main tours, Woobin definitely stands out as being a good player. He can definitely make it to the finals with a good team prep and some good performances here and there in terms of room tours. He can make semifinals or finals pretty easily. But in terms of the normal Plaza scene, especially when it comes to these Smogon events, a lot of people will probably downplay him as just another one of those randos, which is kind of unfair because he was part of the winning team of BLT. So it'll be interesting to see how Woobin does single player wise. And now with such a big stage like Tours Plaza Classic, who knows what he'll do. So keep your eye out for Woobin. Next is two players who I definitely don't know. Well, I have seen the Bright Rising before in some small guy, some little tour in, I don't know, Ruins of Alpha or something. But next up we have Derpy Boy, who I do know, and he's part of, once again, Deerlings. He is an OMM player. He definitely had a pretty good record out of it. 4-3 is not a bad record to shout at, but it's gonna be hard separating yourself from the pack when you're not gonna likely play a lot of OMMs this year in TPC, but because this is entirely focused on singles. But well, the host is a doubles main, so I can't really say on I can't really say I know all the tiers, so it'll be just as much a surprise to me as to the rest of you guys. But Derpy Boy, he is definitely a player I would highlight because singles wise, well, we've seen before in his past performances in OMMs, like he can bring it. He can absolutely build well and definitely bring it to the battle. And he's definitely gonna win over Eden Wu, which I don't know who that is. But yeah, this will be a good showcase for Derpy Boy to see how how much potential he has in terms of uh, this this play. Next up is, well, I'm gonna highlight Nate 5011, not for previous tournament experience, but due to the fact that he keeps pestering tour staff about LC and room tours. So next up, moving on, we have Euphanos, a good friend of mine. He widely regarded as one of the best Kamamons players of all time. Euphanos is definitely gonna be one of those people that is very interesting to watch and play, because he's definitely good. He's definitely good. I will not say he's bad. I think he'll go far. Honestly, Euphanos is definitely one of those players that will go far. So yeah, not much to say. Just expect good things out of Euphanos. Also, he's not like the highest rank CCC player from this past year for nothing. He's definitely got the credibility to back it up. So we'll see. Also, he competed in last year's TPP, and he did all right. Next up is Sky of Doom. Many Plaza players would actually not notice, but Sky of Doom actually competes in a lot of Smog tours, a lot more Smog tours. I've seen them around, particularly in 1v1s and some of the meta-focused ones. But yeah, Sky of Doom, he's alright. Not really much to say, but definitely it's going to be a big leap in logic to see he's competing in a big tour such as this. So, better be expected to that. Next up is Casual.exe. Now, here's definitely a player that most people will recognize. So, if you've been living under the Plaza community for 2 years, like, you would know that Casual.exe is not only just a good Rands player, but also singles wise, he's really good. Like, he can definitely give you a run for your money. I faced him in Shadows tour a while back, and yeah, to say it wasn't a curb stomp would be an understatement. Casual.exe, definitely a player, and he was runner up in the first ever TPC. So you better get ready to, if you faced off against Casual.exe, goodbye to the rest of your touring days. So yeah, Casual.exe, definitely one of the favorites, I would say. One of the first proper favorites to win this tour. I don't know either of these two, so let's move on to Lechen, who is a Plaza grinder. So he's competed in the leaderboards for Plaza for quite a long time now. Definitely, like, being a Plaza grinder makes you a little more, has a lot more advantages, because you would be able to know what kind of tiers Plaza would be able to cook up. Like, all the wacky metas, all the crazy tiers that we set, you'll definitely get accustomed to that, and Plaza grinders have a huge advantage over that, and that's why Lechen is definitely someone you should not take lightly. Like, I've faced him quite a few times in room tours, and even though bragging aside, I've given him a proper fight before. Like, he can still beat your ass. So Lechen is gonna be one of those players that is, a dark horse, you would say, because of the advantages of having a Plaza grinder, like I've already mentioned. Next up is Panu. We've seen this guy before in TPP. Definitely a good player. He's definitely a good player. And OU, I would say OU is well, he is an Uber's main, but OU, he's not bad. He's really quite decent, and another player that I will highlight because we've established his credibility before. So we'll see what happens in TPC. All right, next up, 7U992. Now, this guy, I will still call him one of the most underrated players in Tours Plaza, because, like, his TPP performance last year really did not do him justice, because he's good. He is good when motivated. He's pretty good. It's just unfortunate that the way that the way he played back in TPC, no TPP, was real bad. That did not do him justice. But for a single elimination tour such as this, like look at him in TLT the previous year. He made it into the playoffs. So again, a player that you would not expect. Did he make playoffs actually? Let me go check. Yeah, he did. He lost to Sensei Axu in playoffs. So yeah, 72992 is not a bad player. Um I think it's due to the fact that Ubers he wasn't really gamed for Ubers as he was in TPP. So it'll be interesting to see back in OU like how good he is now in TPC. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see, and I'm very looking forward to it. So next up is I don't know who either of these two is. I've heard of Huge Noob LMAO, but not as much. So let's move on to Don Vasquez. This boy hasn't been really appearing all that much. Well, the last time we saw him was TPP, where he did all right. He was 3-3 in stab, in TPP. So yeah. The fact it'll be interesting to see how he does in single elimination formats, and to start off with a tier that is not an OMM. But yeah, when he plays though, I think he's all right. I think he's pretty good. So yeah, I'm looking forward to good things about Don Vasquez, and if he goes well, he'll definitely go well. I like. So prepare. Next up is Limpy Lucario, one of the newest Tours Room voices. Limpy, when it comes to, well, he's hosting that Ranbats Mayhem tour. uh, he's hosting that Ranbats Mayhem tour, and he's pretty well at it. He's also hosting a lot of Manita tours in regular tournaments room. If you want to go check that out. But in terms of playing, in terms of performing, like Limpy, I will say, not as good as I would like to hope. Like, yeah, I'm sorry if I have a higher standard, but yeah, Limpy just doesn't have that oomph factor that a lot of other rigs have, like Woobin especially. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does in this year's TPC, and for first time, this is his first event in general, so like a lot of players are. So yeah, very cool, very interesting to see what happens. So may want to keep an eye out for particularly Limpy. Next up is TX Us. So TX, I've faced him before. I've faced him in a lot actually. I've seen him around in particularly the Ruins of Alf, the Ruins of Alf scene where he's done a lot of tours there. But I will definitely say he's all right. He's not bad, but he definitely does lack that extra oomph that I've already previously mentioned. So yeah, very interesting to see what happens with TX in TPC. But yeah, um, definitely definitely looking forward to it. I'm sorry if I come off a bit stuttery since I don't really have a script going forward, but yeah, you know what? I'm winging it. I'm winging it like always. Next up, Saba. Definitely one of the most underrated Plaza players of all time. Like, he's not on the level of, say, a Kither or a Raj.Shoot or the Number Man. But in terms of the Plaza scene, Saba is a very effervescent presence. So, he's good. He is good. Like I mentioned, he's very underrated because he plays super well. So, but he's never really made it far in terms of Plaza events in general. I think the highest I'll ever say that I've ever seen about Saba is that he made semifinals with the Hatrens in BLT, but that's like now a million years ago. So very cool. Next up is Velvet. Let's talk about Velvet. Like, Velvet, she's Miss Cap, Miss NFE, Miss Ubers, like whatever you want to call her. Uh, Velvet can be pretty hit or miss when it comes to Plaza events. Like the last time actually that I've seen her do anything is that she lost in TPI 2 to Temp, and she did compete in BL. I don't. I think she competed in BLT. I'm not remembering right. But yeah, Velvet never really plays tours now, at least here in the Plaza scene. Well, in other tours, like in other Smogon related things, she's effervescent there. But here, do I see her making this far? Hit or miss. Like her performances, it's very hit or miss. Like she can do well at one day, the next day she'll absolutely crumble. So it's very interesting to see what happens with Velvet. Next up, moving on from one Ubers player to another, and this time with an actual like bags of experience and actually does pretty well in terms of Smogon events. Ainscrad. Ainscrad, very uh, definitely one of the more up and coming Ubers players. Like uh, not just Ubers though. Like every single Smogon event he does pretty well, and the fact that he's making it far into particular events is crazy to see. I'm definitely glad that Boyne is making rounds in Smogon, and he's proving himself to be a very potent competitor. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here in Plaza, going back to where you all came from, where it all begins again, and all that. But yeah, Boyne, I mean, definitely someone you should look forward to into this tour, and possibly a favorite. Well, I don't know. TLT has proven me otherwise, but you never know what could happen. Next up is Geov97, another really good friend of mine. Geov, she's a really good player, but she lacks. But out of all the people who I've said has lacking the biggest motivation, I think Geov is the prime example of it. Like, she's a really good player. When she's motivated, she does extraordinarily well. But when she's less motivated, sh uh, definitely some of the biggest missed potential there. Like, Geov has all the tools, all the potential in the world to make her a really good player. It's just that in terms of, well, there's also the fact that there's better players. She has a lot out of upside. It's the fact that you take advantage of that upside in order to win matches. So I really want Geov to go as far as she would like to, maybe even subvert her own expectations. So we'll see what happens. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, and I'm pretty excited to know what what Geov brings to the table and how well she can do in terms of Plaza events in general. Next up is Sificon, another really underrated player in terms of Plaza events. Very experienced player, very good player. Was a team manager, of course, with the Bounce Suite, who went to semifinals this past T uh, this past TPP. But yeah, a very a very good player. Definitely has the tools to make it, and especially with his track record over the past few years. Like Sificon's reputation has gone up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, like a roller coaster. So I'm hoping that Siffy does all the best in the world. He tries his best, absolutely motivates, absolutely is motivated, and in the end will proceed to win. Next up is another prediction match that I want to see happen: Swiftix versus OMFG guy. Hmm. I've never really seen both. I've never really seen both play in room tours all that much. Well, OMFG guy, I've seen him perform in room tours for quite a while. Um, Definitely, again, with another case of another less than average performance wise in terms of tours. But Swiftix, I've never really seen either perform. Like, I know she's well, he or she is a global staff, but never really never really see them in room tours, so that's gonna be a huge downside. It's definitely gonna be a test of. It's gonna be definitely a showcase match between both players and see what they can do in a big stage such as TPC. And I'm going to predict that Swiftix will win barely. Like, this will go to a 3-game series, and Swiftix will definitely will win, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe OMFG guy has actual hacks in him to absolutely hacks the shoot out of Swiftix. Next up is Kither. Moving on. No. Kither, easily like revered as objectively the greatest Plaza player of all time, and there's no argument about that. Kither is definitely like revered amongst the Tours Plaza community as one of the GOATs, the Hall of Famers in terms of Plaza. Like, he's won every single Plaza event that has ever come out, except for TPC2 with the victory given. Well, he was runner up there, but Kither definitely the biggest favorite to win the whole tour. S tier in terms of everything he does, and yeah, there's no question about it. Kither is the GOAT, and if he doesn't make semifinals, then I'm gonna flip a table, plain and simple. Next up is Mr. Bossaru, contacted. Moving on. Well, next is me. So, my reputation in Plaza has definitely, in terms of Plaza events and towards events in general, I'm definitely less than average. Like, my biggest success in terms of Plaza events is reaching top 6 of Tours Plaza Invitational 2. But aside from that, my performances have been just less than average, mostly due to the fact that I was lacking in motivation, and the fact that I just got better players. I just got better players in my matchups, so definitely unlucky there, and also due to the fact that I've never made a playoffs with a team before, except for the first time, which was with the Swamperts. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how I'll do. I'll definitely try my best, of course. I'll definitely like pack a punch when it comes to this tour, but don't expect much from me. I'm not gonna make like quarterfinals or something like that. Not gonna happen. No way. Next up, Wilski 780. Another Plaza grinder. One of the newer Plaza grinders, actually. Like, I've seen Wilski like perform. Average. Average. I think he's average in terms of, not just with grinding, but in terms of performance, and especially the semifinals and finals of a room tour. He's very average. Like, he plays exactly what a room tour reg should do. I think Wilski is one of the prime examples. Like, he can win, definitely. He's definitely got the tools to win matches. But it's just that the level of play is vastly different compared to the tour's veterans and the newcomers. So, there you go. Another case of example is the next one I'm going to highlight, Magirna the Boss. Now, Magirna the Boss, again, is another example of a Plaza grinder, but I'd say he's better than Wilski because, he's definitely not just due to the fact that he wins a lot more than Wilski, but just due to the fact that his performance is genuinely, like, better. Better in every way. I think with enough practice and with a little bit more experience when it comes to these events, I think Magirna the Boss is one of those players that will absolutely be a mainstay in the Plaza scene. So, better look forward to that. Next up is LTG, LOL Troll Game. I've been seeing this guy in a hot while ever since teaming with him in the last BLT 8. Um, he's definitely a player that can be very good when motivated, but when he's not, he just grumbles. But you know, he's a good player. He's a good player, definitely. But not saying he's bad, but when it comes to the main Plaza scene in general, I feel like he's one of those players that is lost in the shuffle. Not a knock against him, not a knock against any of these players. It's just that from a general outsider's perspective, that's the observation that I had. So yeah, very interesting to see. Next is Mossy Sandwich. Definitely is one of the older Plaza player. When we're talking old, we're talking like 1 year ago or 2 years ago old. Aside from me, who is like ancient at this point. So, Mossy Sandwich definitely does a lot of does a lot of stuff in the room. Definitely builds a lot of good teams. He's also a borderline enthusiast because he likes the RUBL, UUBL, all those kinds of crazy metas. Definitely another player I would look forward to. Like if they make far, or I'll give them more of a glowing review. But it just depends on how well they do in this tour, especially because that's the biggest testament to all these players, like how good they will do in this tour and future upcoming tours that will really define how we perceive all these people in general as players. So that's just my opinion, man. Next up is probably the highlight match of round one. Honestly, like if we're looking at the general template of all these brackets, it's either going to be a veteran versus a newcomer. A lot of these are definitely evident here. However, we got a matchup here that is easily easily the highlight match, like the best matchup of round one. Carl Dude Guy versus Kipper. Two mono mains being paired up against each other. Well, we haven't seen a highlight match ever since like Tranquility versus Stitchu. That kind of level of hype. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how good these two are evenly matched. I think we've had this matchup before in a past Tours Plaza event. I think Kepper won that one. So it'll be interesting to see. And I think Kepper, I think he's a better player than Carl, even though Carl has been around for as long as me. Like Carl and I have exactly the same kind of timeline, but I think Kepper is definitely a better player than Carl. So I'll predict him to win this one. Not entirely a pitch a shout out, but definitely not like a 6-0 level of curb stompy, but definitely a good fight this one. Looking forward to this matchup. Next up is Eighth, actually. Eighth is a long time Plaza player. I'm very sentimental also about Eighth because he is the first Smogon opponent I've ever had. So very sentimental. But also he's a good player. But when motivated, especially in balanced Tecmons, very, very good player there. So it'll be interesting to see how he does right now in Tours Plaza Classic, now with the perception of him waning from the fact that he was good back in his prime. Now we'll see what happens. So very looking forward to that. Next is Buscar 20, which I will only briefly highlight because I've seen them around in Rune Tours. So let's just skip over to the next one. Dan the Man 99 is back and is competing once again. So Dan, I will say, like, when motivated and when he's given good teams, very, very good player. I mean, have you seen BLT6? 6, I think that was, where Dan went 5-0 in Ubers. Like, he's definitely one of he's definitely peak there back then, but now middling, I'd say. Well, not a knock on Dan, of course, but uh, with rising stars coming up to the occasion, some of us, the veterans, are just kind of low into the spotlight in terms of the players in general. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Dan performs now. Just like with Eighth, um, how long these veterans are gonna go hard and how much they still have left in the tank to come up against these newcomers like Cream Beater here. So interesting. All right, next up is actually a highlight match because it's between two new-ish players that have been around in Plaza for a while now, and we can definitely see the reputation there. Between either side, we have Street Boom versus Shadow Master 6789. Street Boom was a former Plaza and Tours driver, but when he plays, he's actually pretty decent. Like he's not middling like I previously mentioned before, but he's average. Like is exactly how I would envision a good Pokemon Showdown player will be perceived as. So yeah, Street Boom, definitely a good definitely a good player. Pitted up against another pretty good player in the form of Shadow Master, who has given, of course, well, he's competed in a lot of Plaza room tours and does pretty well in them. Like, he's definitely accustomed to the Plaza tiers, like I previously mentioned, and that's a big advantage. So, it'll be interesting to see who wins here and see whose reputation will easily skyrocket more. So, I'm very looking forward to this one. Hopefully, they will post the match when they came out. So, I'm pretty curious on this one. Next up, I don't know the other two here, but I do know one of them, and one of them hasn't been showing his face since day one. Plimsoll Punks. Of course, back in his prime, he's a really good player. Like, we all know that. The Tours community knows who Plimsoll Punks is. Not only just because he hosted a BLT before, but in terms of playing, a really good player. A really, really good player. He can kick ass whenever he wants. Nowadays, I hope he isn't rusty. I really hope he isn't rusty in terms of because he's a dark horse favorite of mine because I personally know the guy. I like when he plays. It's always mesmerizing. So yeah, PP will hopefully stick around, not drop out randomly. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see PP play again in 2022. Next is Mamalu, another underrated player, another very very underrated player. Which I respect the heck out of Mamalu because he's also competed in some room tours and he does pretty well in them. So it'd be interesting to see what he does here in TPC2, TPC3 actually. Despite the fact that the last TPI I actually knocked him out. So shameless brag there. But yeah, Mamalu, very interesting to see what happens with him in the coming weeks. Next is Elfusion. He's back. One of the I think he was Best Newcomer Award. I think TLT. Definitely a good player. I can definitely see him being a good player. Especially since we've seen him in TLT. And he does well. He does pretty well in terms of room tours and such. He can definitely like win a lot of room tours given the motivation that he has. A very very cool player, and I'm very excited. I'm very excited on these newcomers' performances. So I'm excited. Next up is the Dragon Master Advent. another Plaza grinder back in the day, and he's a really good player. Like, he's definitely a player that I've had my eyes on for quite a while, and he's pretty good. Like, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. He's definitely gonna um give Batato 7 a run for their money. So it'll be interesting to see in future rounds how the Dragon Master will do. So yeah. Next up is Hale Dialga, a previous cycle champion. I think he holds the record now. He's taken my and PP's record for longest consecutive streak in tour cycles. Very consistent player. Very when he plays, it's very good. I'd say, yeah, very good. And he's definitely a player that everyone would look out for in the future, and he's definitely like very contributing in terms of the Plaza scene. He's again a ubiquitous presence, but but yeah, looking forward to what he does, especially in a tier that is admittedly pretty easy to build. So yeah, I think I've heard of Mercupti before, or I'm thinking of BSS all over again because I've been doing a lot of BSS stuff. Let's move on now instead to Fleeting Memories, who has who I've actually never seen before, so it'll be interesting to see how he does here. And he's pitted up against a guy we have seen before, and we have seen do pretty well at some points, not in some other days. LPH, never. He doesn't really have a main, I've noticed, but like some players have usually an established main that they always go back to in terms of and can do really well in them. LPH doesn't really have a main. He's basically an all-rounder. So, and being an all-rounder is one of the best attributes in terms of being a good player. So, it'll be interesting to see how LPH does in this tour. And hopefully he does well. Cross my fingers. I actually don't know the next 4 people on here, so let's move on. Well, yeah, I don't know much about the rest of the 4 people on here. They do have all interesting profile pics. I'll point that out. Next up, Roldski 32. He's a fellow Filipino, so yeah, let's get that pride in, shall we? LV boys. Roldski, he very good player. He made the top 6 in TPI 2, just the same as me and Trace. But yeah, Roldski, when he plays, he's obviously an LC main. He loves the heck out of LC. But in other tiers, he's not that bad. So it'll be interesting to see how he does now, given that the credibility that he has, and it's also like OMM's mod. So, yeah, I'm very excited on how Roldski does as well. Next up is Doc 1203. I've seen this guy a lot. I have seen this guy a lot in room tours. Not only room tours, but in Smogon, Ruins of Alph, all that kind of stuff. I've faced him before in BSS Masters just as recently. He's all right. He's pretty good. Definitely interesting to see what happens here. So, expect unexpected opponents. And now the patron saint of unexpected opponents, Ron 5. He already has a point. What the heck? So, never mind the fact that he already has a point. Ron, winner of definitely most improved award. Or if I did make a most improved, Ron would be easily one of them. Ron is definitely where I'm at the point now where I can confidently say that he is a good player. Yeah. Don't expect that from me. He did now. So, yeah, Ron definitely has improved over the past year. Definitely in terms of matches, he's definitely got that. He's definitely got that potential that I was looking in him for so long. And now that he has it, and is definitely a good player now. So, I'm very interested in see what Ron does. Like, I hope he makes it far. I definitely do hope he makes it far. So, again. Ron, props to you. Props to you, Ron. You've improved. You've improved your not only your presence, but your but your performance over the past year. Props. Next up is Tectonic Destroyer. Another very ubiquitous presence in terms of Smog Tours. Like, I know he does BSS a lot, and he's done OU, and he will never shut up about the fact that he made World Cup. Ugh. But Tectonic Destroyer, definitely someone who I see potential in. Another case of a really good showcase match for Tect. Like, we've seen him before. We've seen him before in TPP3. But in single elimination format, well, it's definitely interesting to see how well Tech does. And finally, the last match I gotta highlight. The last two players I highlight is actually paired up against with each other, and is fighting in round 1. First off is Instruct. We've seen Instruct play in TPP, and it's very interesting to see how he'll do single elimination wise and individual tour wise. So that's gonna be fun. And the last player I'm gonna highlight is Grandmaster. Like, this guy has competed in. He's actually now the current threat in terms of the Plaza leaderboards. Like, he's consistently topped them over the past 6 cycles now. So definitely a player I would look for in terms of how he'll do in the tour, and to see how well he does in general. So, and if he breaks out of the Plaza, if he breaks out of his Plaza cycle leaderboard phase, to see how well he does in Smogon, definitely something to look forward to. And that's gonna wrap things up for this video. We've covered the players I'm interested. We've covered the players that I wanted to talk about. All the matchups that are warranting of predictions I've given myself. Also, the fact that that I've only highlighted specific players who I've wanted to see and do. I hope you do well. Well, I'll also try my best because I'm also competing in this dang thing. So, yeah. Good luck to each and every one of you who competing in this tour. I hope you impress me because I'm some sort of American Idol or judge or NXT all over again. But I want to see the very best, like no one ever was. I want to see the very best fighting you guys, and I hope that you do your absolute best in this tour. So good luck to each and every one of you participants. I'm looking forward to it. Are you looking forward to it? You bet your ass you will. So make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll keep updating you on this tour as best as I can, and I will definitely cover all the matches, not just specific replays I want to see, but all the matches that are posted, and not only posted, but the ones that aren't coin flipped. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how happens in this tour. Thank you all for watching. This has been Mikoy, signing out. Good luck to everyone in TPC.